Well, it's not up to me. It's up to Mr. Combs, and I don't see it happening.
Why?
Because he believes he's innocent. He believes he's innocent. And what's more, he believes that he needs to stand up, not just for himself, for his family, and for everybody who's been targeted by the federal government.
Well, Bill and Shady, accepting a plea agreement would mean that Sean Combs would have to admit to trafficking and force. And today he made it very clear that was not going to happen. Diddy maintained all along these encounters involved consenting adults and plans to take his chances that a jury agrees.
When news broke that federal agents raided multiple properties tied to Sean Diddy Combs, people expected a long list of allegations, but no one expected his own son's name to be at the center of it. Christian King Combs, Diddy's 27-year-old son and rising rapper, is now being described by insiders as the potential key witness in what could become one of the most explosive celebrity trials in decades.
How can you support your father? How do you support him moving forward?
According to reports, Christian has already met with federal prosecutors in New York twice, alongside his legal team. What they discussed is sealed, but the leaks are telling. Court documents and encrypted communications place Christian directly in the middle of logistical operations, now flagged as fronts for a much larger criminal scheme.
I literally took one sip of my beverage and the whole side of my face felt like I had a stroke.
Isn't that, to my mind, that's one of the bigger hurdles in selecting a jury this coming week, is that there is, at least anecdotally, when I talk to people, they have that opinion, strongly held opinion, that there's celebrity tapes, that they've kind of conflated Epstein, and you mentioned Ghislaine Maxwell and all of these things into Diddy. There's this idea that somehow this is Epstein redux or something.
These weren't just social events or brand promotions. Investigators say Christian had authority over yacht bookings, catering expenses, security details, and venue logistics for exclusive high-end gatherings, some of which are now part of a sex trafficking and racketeering case. His name appears on financial approvals, encrypted chats, and scheduling threads. And according to the prosecution, these weren't routine business tasks. They were deliberate moves to create layers between public-facing events and what was allegedly happening behind the scenes. Christian, knowingly or not, may have been closer to the core than anyone else outside Diddy himself. As investigators dug deeper, the digital trail started to take shape, and it wasn't subtle. Authorities recovered chains of encrypted messages from apps known for their privacy features, the kind of tools used when discretion isn't optional. According to leaked court filings, these chats included names, dates, financial approvals, and logistical confirmations. And Christian Combs? He wasn't just copied on a few of them. He was actively participating. His name came up in connection with organizing guest transportation, confirming luxury accommodations, and even coordinating security for what prosecutors now describe as highly controlled environments. The real game changer came when prosecutors matched communication timestamps to private jet flight logs. Not only did the travel data line up with these messages, but it also pointed to a recurring pattern. Flights to remote island destinations, always under the guise of business or brand activation, but always involving the same tight-knit guest list. Then came White Sands Weekend, the trip that keeps showing up in internal documents and sealed testimony. On paper, it was an elite promotional retreat, but prosecutors say it was far more than that. Attendees were allegedly required to sign NDAs, phones were confiscated, and outside communication was restricted. The encrypted conversations around this event show layers of coordination that investigators claim reflect deliberate efforts to hide what was really going on. Christian's role in these communications is now considered critical. Whether he understood the scope or not, he may be the key to connecting the people, the paper trail, and the parties that define this case. Once the digital communications were mapped out, the next step was following the money. And that's where things got even messier. Federal investigators claim Diddy used a complex web of 17 shell companies between 2016 and 2023 to quietly move over $74 million. On the surface, these companies looked legitimate: media startups, consulting firms, brand partnerships. But behind the scenes, the money was being routed in circles, redirected, and rebranded before landing in places that made no sense for traditional business expenses. Lavish private jets, sprawling vacation rentals, luxury security firms — it all appeared to be funded by what prosecutors are calling synthetic businesses. One especially suspicious transaction caught their attention: $900,000 wired from Diddy's liquor brand to a media company that hadn't posted a single piece of content in over 2 years. That same company then funded private jet travel to what was supposed to be a brand event held offshore. The feds believe this was no accident. According to court filings, multiple events, including White Sands Weekend, were funded in nearly identical ways. Paper trails were deliberately layered, names of executives rotated, and invoices rewritten with vague service descriptions like hospitality coordination or brand activation logistics. At the center of several approvals, Christian Combs. Prosecutors say his role in signing off on these expenses might show that he wasn't just a passive observer. He may have been a functional part of the operation. Whether he knew the full scope or not, his cooperation now puts the entire financial structure under a microscope. And for Diddy, that could mean the difference between plausible deniability and criminal accountability. As the narrative built against Diddy in the press and the courtroom, his legal team came out swinging. Led by veteran defense attorney Aaron Sussman, the strategy was clear: dismantle the prosecution's image of a criminal empire and reframe the case as a coordinated takedown of a black-owned legacy brand. From day one, Diddy's lawyers labeled the investigation a smear campaign, arguing that the charges were based on exaggerated interpretations of consensual adult behavior and business as usual in the entertainment industry.
What made you come here to support Puff?
I'm supporting Puff because he's innocent, and I'm wholeheartedly believing his innocence, and I know he's innocent. So,
Well, you think you know he's innocent?
1,000%.
Mr. Combs feels A, he's innocent, which is why he's not going to plead guilty. B, he's going to be truthful about this case because he wants to portray that to the people who have loved him his whole life. And I think he also feels an obligation to people in general. Maybe it's Black people, maybe it's white people, maybe it's anybody who's ever felt aggrieved and targeted by the government. He feels an obligation to those people to say, you know what, maybe I can break the model. Maybe I can show the world that a Black man can win, in federal court. And I think he probably is the only person I know of who might be able to actually accomplish that.
And when the judge did, Diddy, who was sitting at the defense table with his attorneys, did not show any signs of emotion. He took a sip of water before he was led out of the courtroom by the U.S. Marshals. Now, his lawyers have vowed to fight this. They are going to be back in court on Wednesday before the judge who will oversee this trial and try to get Diddy to be released.
Sussman pointed to the timing of the charges, the media leaks, and the involvement of Diddy's own son as evidence that something deeper was at play. Something that, in his words, reeked of targeted dismantling, not justice. And while prosecutors were ready to deal, Diddy wasn't interested. They reportedly offered a plea bargain that would cap his sentence at 12 years and involve the forfeiture of $20 million in assets, private jets, real estate, even a percentage of his liquor holdings. But Diddy said no. His team rejected the deal, signaling that he was prepared to fight the charges head-on in court. It was a bold move, but also a risky one, because once you go to trial, everything comes out. The texts, the logs, the photos, the NDA documents, all of it. And with his son allegedly cooperating, Diddy's inner circle was starting to look a lot less loyal. By the time jury selection began, it was clear the prosecution wasn't holding anything back. Prospective jurors were handed 24-page questionnaires, an unusually aggressive move designed to weed out bias, especially when it came to celebrity defendants. The questions covered everything from opinions on fame and power to views on adult consent, luxury lifestyles, and even personal beliefs about privilege in the music industry. But that was just the beginning. Prosecutors then filed a motion to introduce what's known as prior bad acts, past incidents that, while not directly related to the current charges, allegedly show a pattern of behavior. One of the most talked about was from 2013, when Diddy's security team reportedly forced guests at a Miami party to hand over their phones before they were wiped clean. On its own, that might seem like paranoia or high-level privacy management, But in this case, the prosecution says it shows a long-standing effort to control narratives, erase evidence, and isolate events from public scrutiny. And the list doesn't stop there. There are reports of deleted surveillance footage, cash-only payments to event staff, and last-minute guest list changes tied to encrypted messages. All of it paints a picture of someone not just protecting his image, but protecting a system. With each new piece of supporting evidence, the stakes rose, not just legally, but reputationally. Because once the jury sees a pattern, especially one that spans a decade, it's no longer just about one party or one deal. It becomes about intent. And that's exactly what prosecutors are banking on. For years, Diddy positioned himself not just as an entertainer, but as a philanthropist, donating millions to causes that uplifted Black communities, supported young artists, and gave back to institutions like Howard University. It was part of his brand, his identity. But now, even those generous gestures are under scrutiny. Federal investigators claim some of these donations weren't acts of charity. They were strategic moves in a much bigger financial shell game. According to forensic accountants working with the prosecution, Diddy donated over $6.4 million across multiple organizations, including youth arts programs in Los Angeles and historically Black colleges. But here's where it gets suspicious. Almost every donation was followed by a near-identical withdrawal from personal or business accounts just days later. The term prosecutors are using is circular financing. In simple terms, that means moving money in and out of entities to make it look like it's being used for something legitimate, when really, it's just being cleaned. And when those donations lead back to shell companies tied to event planning, private travel, and promotional parties that now sit at the center of a trafficking case, it stops looking like good PR and starts looking like money laundering. Worse, insiders allege some of these nonprofits were fronts. Minimal staff, vague missions, and no public-facing activity beyond the occasional press release. What's more, several of these transfers were approved by names now flagged in the investigation, including associates linked to Christian Combs. The feds aren't just looking at the numbers anymore. They're looking at the intent behind every dollar. And in a case already saturated with encrypted chats, staged events, and family betrayal, even generosity isn't above suspicion. As court filings piled up and headlines grew more chaotic, the internet did what it always does. It chose sides loudly. Social media platforms became battlegrounds, especially on Black Twitter, where two hashtags started trending in direct opposition: #Protect King Combs and #Black Wall of Silence. For some, Christian Combs is being hailed as brave, a young man caught between legacy and truth, stepping forward in a moment that could reshape everything. Supporters argue that Christian isn't betraying anyone. He's exposing what needs to be exposed, even if it comes at a personal cost. They say this isn't about turning on family, it's about refusing to be part of something you can no longer justify. But the other side sees something very different. To them, Christian's alleged cooperation is the ultimate betrayal, one that plays directly into a justice system many feel is designed to dismantle powerful Black figures from the inside out. These voices are warning that if Christian testifies, he's not just taking down his father. He's handing over the keys to an empire built against all odds. The debate is heated, emotional, and deeply personal. It's no longer just about Diddy or Christian, it's about what their story represents. Generational wealth, public image, private trauma, and the impossible expectations that come with all of it. Even celebrities have started weighing in, some cryptically, others more directly. But one thing is clear, no matter which side people are on, no one is looking away. Because this isn't just courtroom drama. It's a cultural reckoning. While the courtroom battles rage and social media splits in two, Diddy's business empire is quietly unraveling behind the scenes. Deals are being paused, partnerships are vanishing, and brands that once lined up to be associated with him are now scrambling to distance themselves. Revolt TV, the media network Diddy co-founded and proudly positioned as a voice for the culture, has reportedly frozen all executive operations linked to him. Internal reviews are underway, and sources close to the board say several staff members have either resigned or been reassigned. Warner Music Group, one of the industry's biggest players, has launched its own audit into past deals tied to Diddy's labels and artists, and then there's the financial fallout. An exclusive art auction with Sotheby's, expected to feature rare pieces from Diddy's personal collection, has been abruptly canceled. His fashion label is rumored to be exploring partial liquidation. Even his once booming liquor business is feeling the heat, with distributors quietly backing away or freezing promotional activity altogether. The unraveling isn't loud, it's strategic. No press releases, no dramatic announcements, just quiet exits and phone calls that stop getting returned. Because for corporate America, image is everything. And when a figure like Diddy becomes radioactive, the exodus is fast and surgical. What's more chilling is that some of these companies aren't just distancing themselves, they're preparing for the possibility that they'll be named in the next wave of subpoenas. Suddenly, the brand that once stood for luxury, power, and reinvention is now a risk no one wants to take. In the end, this case was never just about money, shell companies, or even federal charges. It's about legacy, how fast it can rise, and how brutally it can fall. Diddy wasn't just a celebrity, he was a movement, a mogul, a symbol of black excellence who built his empire from nothing and turned it into a billion-dollar dynasty. But now, that legacy is on trial, literally. With each court filing, each leaked message, each canceled contract, the image he spent decades crafting is being stripped away layer by layer. And perhaps the most shocking part, the person who might define the outcome of it all isn't a rival, a journalist, or a federal agent. It's his own son. Christian Combs stands at the center of a story that's no longer just personal. It's generational, it's public, and it's far from over. Because as prosecutors hint at more sealed testimony, more names involved, and deeper layers of financial manipulation, one thing is clear: this is just the beginning. The final verdict may not only decide Diddy's future, it may force the entire industry to look in the mirror. This story is far from over. So, what do you think? Is Christian Combs exposing the truth? Or is this the ultimate betrayal? Drop your take in the comments. And if you want the full breakdown as this case unfolds, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and stay locked in. We've got more coming. And it's only getting deeper.